Once again, good morning. Welcome to the 21st anniversary of Shumei International Institute. My name is Eugene Imai. I'm humbled and honored to lead Sampai today instead of Tamao Kaicho Sensei. Before my speech, I'd like to share what just came up to me this morning. Shumei always recites 3 poems from each page of this Miyakareshi booklet, this compilation of our founder, Meishu-sama's poems. This morning's poems, do you remember? 24. If you have this book, you don't. If you have a program, today's 3 poems, page 24. The first one, Miroko Mikami, appears with the joined powers of fire, water, and earth. These poems was on the page 24, which was also the same page at the grand opening of this center 21 years ago, 2002. Grand opening. It mentions the 3 elements of fire, water, and earth, which inspired Shumei's former president, Kaicho Sensei, to designate this place as the Shumei's sacred ground of earth. We had the sacred grounds of water, fire, as Doug mentioned in his testimonials. But 2002, at the grand opening, these poems were given by Meishu-sama, and Miss Koyama was inspired. She decided to make this one as the final, the 3rd sacred ground of Shumei, Earth Center. Today, I strongly feel the spirit of our former president, whom we used to call Kaicho Sensei, or Hiroko Kaicho Sensei. She passed away on September 1st last year, 2022. Now she's referred as Seiwa no Mikoto-sama. Together, Seiwa no Mikoto-sama. Long name. Sorry, but you get used to it. Now, Tamao Sensei succeeded her as the current Kaicho Sensei. He couldn't come this time due to the condition of airport security is not normalized yet. We missed the former president, Kaicho Sensei, Miss Koyama. But I'm sure she's with us now in spirit, and she's still guiding us. Thank you, Seiwa no Mikoto-sama, for your love, kindness, and support. Thank you, Hana. Today we are gathered here in the San Luis Valley. Long ago, indigenous people came here for sacred healing ceremonies and vision quests. It was considered so sacred that no one fought each other, and there were no wars among tribes. This is why the native people called this place the Bloodless Valley. They united with each other, and there's a common goal to honor and protect this sacred land for themselves as well as the future generations. What do you think? Shall we follow their good example to honor by protecting our entire world for future generations. The title of my speech today is Balance and Harmony. Whenever nature appears vibrant and beautiful, there is always balance and harmony amongst the various parts. When we have a balance and harmony within us, body, mind, spirit, we can enjoy a healthy life. Years ago, there was a fascinating experiment that restored balance and harmony within nature. Wolves were once native to Yellowstone National Park in the United States. In the 1930s, wolves were wiped out through brutal hunting, which greatly affected the balance and harmony in that area. When wolves returned in 1995, however, something unexpected happened. Unexpected, remarkable trophic cascade occurred. I'd like to show you a short video called How Wolves Change Rivers. That is a fascinating title, isn't it? You don't think animals could affect the course or quality of rivers, would you? I have watched this video many times, and each time I become deeply moved. Now let's watch.
One of the most exciting scientific findings of the past half-century has been the discovery of widespread trophic cascades. A trophic cascade is an ecological process which starts at the top of the food chain and tumbles all the way down to the bottom. And the classic example is what happened in the Yellowstone National Park in the United States when wolves were reintroduced in 1995. Now, we all know that wolves kill various species of animals, but perhaps we're slightly less aware that they give life to many others. Before the wolves turned up, they'd been absent for 70 years. That the numbers of deer, because there was nothing to hunt them, had built up in the Yellowstone Park, and despite efforts by humans to control them, they'd managed to reduce much of the vegetation there to almost nothing. They'd just grazed it away. But as soon as the wolves arrived, even though they were few in number, they started to have the most remarkable effects. First, of course, they killed some of the deer, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, they radically changed the behavior of the deer. The deer started avoiding certain parts of the park, the places where they could be trapped most easily, particularly the valleys and the gorges. And immediately those places started to regenerate. In some areas, the height of the trees quintupled in just 6 years. Bare valley sides quickly became forests of aspen and willow and cottonwood. And as soon as that happened, the birds started moving in. The number of songbirds and migratory birds started to increase greatly. The number of beavers started to increase because beavers like to eat the trees. And beavers, like wolves, are ecosystem engineers. They create niches for other species. And the dams they built in the rivers provided habitats for otters and muskrats and ducks and fish and reptiles and amphibians. The wolves killed coyotes, and as a result of that, the number of rabbits and mice began to rise, which meant more hawks, more weasels, more foxes, more badgers. Ravens and bald eagles came down to feed on the carrion that the wolves had left. Bears fed on it too, and their population began to rise as well, partly also because there were more berries growing on the regenerating shrubs. And the bears reinforced the impact of the wolves by killing some of the calves of the deer. But here's where it gets really interesting. The wolves changed the behavior of the rivers. They began to meander less. There was less erosion. The channels narrowed, more pools formed, more riffle sections, all of which were great for wildlife habitats. The rivers changed in response to the wolves. And the reason was that the regenerating forests stabilized the banks so that they collapsed less often, so that the rivers became more fixed in their course. Similarly, by driving the deer out of some places and the vegetation recovering on the valley sides, there was less soil erosion because the vegetation stabilized that as well. So the wolves, small in number, transformed not just the ecosystem of the Yellowstone National Park, this huge area of land, but also its physical geography.
So wolves are saying, did you get that? Wolves are part of the great web of life that connects all species with each other. All animals and plants support each other, including predators and prey. Everything is interconnected. Because each one is dependent on the other, we cannot say which animal or plant is superior to the other. All are equally important for the benefit of the whole. Now, how about the human body? Do you know about the gut flora? It is a complex community of microorganism species that live in our digestive tracts. The human body carries about 100 trillion microorganisms in the intestines. I don't know how they counted all of those. It must have taken a very long time. There are all kinds of these microorganisms. Some of them are good, some of them are bad for humans. But they usually exist in perfect balance. It is said that the best ratio for the human body is 80% good microorganisms and 20% bad ones. And for all we know, we may actually need some of those bad ones. This tells us that nature is so complex that it is almost impossible to know how everything relates to each other. But we do know that it is not wise to try to eliminate all bad microorganisms. If we do that, it would create a new imbalance, one possibly worse than the previous one. That's what the antibiotics do, right? Again, it is important to remember that everything is interconnected. You may already know this fact, but probably you don't know, or you don't pay attention to your gut flora every day. Do you? Because there are so many things to be concerned with. Ever since I myself got a life and death experience in my colon inside of me, 13 years ago, in 2009, I do pay attention to my body every day. I do so seriously and gratefully. My colon stopped moving, and I was suffered from excruciating pain. The food could not come out from my body. I was taken to the hospital, and the doctors decided to open my stomach to find out what was happening in my colon. To make a long story short, I was lucky to avoid surgery, and after 2 weeks, the colon started moving again without the use of any medication. What is more important is how I was totally transformed in my awareness and lifestyle after this purification. In Shumei, we consider all pains and sufferings as a process of purification of our body, mind, and spirit. Instead of viewing them as problems, we accept them as opportunities for us to learn and grow. The colon purification taught me how I was not grateful enough to my body and the people around me. I strongly believe my body is sacred, and it is leased to me for fulfilling my unique mission. It is not my own thing. So I'm now grateful to my all body parts, including gut flora. Every time I eat and go to the bathroom, I offer sincere thanks to all my body. Thank you, gut bacteria, something like that. Now back to the main theme of balance and harmony. So forget the gut flora and wolves. I believe human nature is one of the root causes of the destruction of balance and harmony in our society. We are overly obsessed with our social status and personal gain, rather than thinking about benefiting others. Here, I'd like to introduce you to an interesting article written by Arpit Singh. It is on polarity and duality. I'd like to ask Matthew Crowley to read this article for me.
One of these is essential to the way the physical realm works. The other is nothing more than a two-dimensional belief system. Some people use the terms duality and polarity interchangeably, but I'm going to make a strong distinction between the two for the sake of clarity. The first thing to understand about duality is that it divides. It's either one thing or the other, black or white, right or wrong, good or evil. It does this through judgment, separating things and creating conflict. Duality is how human beings who have much more in common than not are convinced to fight with and even kill each other. Duality is used to create an us versus them mentality. Now, polarity is something else entirely. Where duality has a positive and negative that conflict with each other, polarity has a positive and negative that attract each other. In the case of what recently happened with our sun's poles, they can even switch places. Polarity is complementary forces that work together to create balance, whereas duality is the belief in opposing forces that conflict with each other and create chaos. In duality, one is better or above another, and this is responsible for so much suffering on the planet. Some people believe they're more worthy, more deserving than others, and they take far more than they need. People compare themselves to others and judge themselves as being better or worse, which leads to an inflated ego or to hating oneself. If you really want peace in your life, I recommend letting go of duality altogether. Where duality divides things into black or white, polarity includes the full spectrum. It's all-inclusive. Duality takes the spectrum and draws a line somewhere, cutting it in half. Duality really only exists in the mind. It doesn't directly relate to the physical realm. What people call evil is only the product of not seeing clearly. It's human judgment, not something inherent to the universe itself. What is evil varies from culture to culture and also between individuals. It changes over time as people's minds and opinions change. The only darkness is that which you can't see, what you don't know. It's the fear of the unknown that makes darkness menacing and evil. Your eyes only see a tiny fraction of the full spectrum of light, and yet all the light you cannot see you call darkness. This is a perfect example of why people believe in duality. It's a product of limited perception. It's a judgment based upon limited senses. People see only a tiny fraction of reality and make assumptions about the whole thing. Understanding vibration is key to understanding polarity. Take a guitar string, for instance. Is a low pitch bad and a high pitch good? That's a lot like how duality interprets things. With polarity, you go up and down the full scale to make a beautiful song, the low notes complementing the high notes. This is a secret to how creation works, not through opposing forces, but everything coming together to create a beautiful song.
Thank you, Matthew. I like Mr. Singh's philosophical argument. With a polarity approach, you can take two opposites, such as conservative, liberal, spiritual, and scientific, rational and emotional, or caring for others and caring for yourself, as complementary forces, not opposing each other. The question is how to combine two opposites together. They used to be fighting, but now they are comrades. How do you combine two different elements? Shumez found a Meishu-sama answer to this question was the concept of dynamic balance. Let me quote his teaching on this subject. Quote, "While riding in a car, I often contemplate how similar dynamic balance is to driving. A driver constantly adjusts the steering wheel left and right. I find this interesting. If the driver grips the steering wheel and tries to go only straight, he will soon crash into something. This is obvious when it comes to other things in life. People tend to forget or are not aware of their inclination to be rigid and to fixate on ideas. As a result, they fail to achieve their goals." What is essential here is flexibility, which makes it possible for you to change in many ways, depending upon the specific time, place, and situation. Dynamic balance embodies this quality and is perfectly free and unhindered. Even with the 10 Commandments of Moses and the 5 precepts of the Buddhist tradition, I see limitations. Just sticking to rules is far off the mark. Once fixed rules are established, some people will think that they can do whatever they want, so long as their actions are not restricted by the rules. Truth does not rely on rules and disciplines. End quote. In human relations, flexibility is essential. Stubbornly sticking to our point of view or our way of doing things will inevitably lead to conflict. So we are conflicting each other many places. And in order to be flexible, we need to step back from ourselves and see the big picture. Most importantly, we need to try and see things from the other person's point of view. Then, what may have seemed wrong before may begin to look differently from the eyes of other person. Here is what the Meishu-sama has to say about this issue. Quote, as our faith deepens, the ability to see things from the opposite perspective should be cultivated. I think Meishu-sama hit the nail on the head with this statement. The more we include the perspectives of others, the less self-centered we become, and the more our consciousness expands. Thus, we become the kind of person that others want to deal with. And if we expand our point of view further to include the perspective of natural world, we will begin to treat nature better. We will honor sacred places such as the San Luis Valley by treating it right, and even honor the side of the road by not throwing trash out of the car windows. We will begin to value life and seek balance and harmony wherever we go. Also, we will begin to open our hearts to those around us. This is the world I would like to see. I hope you will join me in working towards this goal. Thank you for listening.